say, "I told you so." I don't like to say it. In fact, my wife, I don't like to say it so much, even my wife knows I don't like to say it. It's distasteful. It's not something that you like to toot your own horn. It's better for other people to kind of kiss you on the ego. But I personally don't like to do it. That said, told you so. I told you so. I am going to show you a case of a man failing miserably, a man falling apart at the seams, a man who staked out a particular political position that was a nonsense position purely for a campaign pledge in which he was in a weaker position. I said he was in a weaker position. I said this would end with him either capitulating, with him declaring a national emergency, or with Republicans leaving him. But I told you Donald Trump was going to fail in this endeavor to get that border wall. And God damn it, I am right. Take a look at this. This is a man failing on the national stage and trying to hide the fact or find any level of cover to the fact that he's just put people out of work for what, 2 weeks paychecks, but 38 days, I believe, that the government was shut down, and he didn't even get a lousy t-shirt. He put people in dire straits for a political campaign pledge and didn't even get the thing that he was trying to get. In fact, he entirely capitulated to the Democrats' position of a clean bill for a few weeks. I think it was like up to February 15th, which was essentially what Democrats were asking for anyway, with the thought of negotiating the border wall after the fact. He's not getting that border wall because Mexico's supposed to pay for it, right? As you know, this video at this point is about Donald Trump. And the government shutdown is over, at the very least for the next 3 weeks. In which case we may be doing this all over again when they decide to not give Donald Trump any money for the border wall again. But Donald Trump has completely collapsed and folded in on himself like a crumpled suit that has no person in it on this issue, capitulating entirely, completely, absolutely to the Democrats' position of February 15th without any money for the border wall. So let's take a look at this. This is a man falling apart.
Thank you very much, my fellow Americans. I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government. As everyone knows, I have a very powerful alternative, but I didn't want to use it at this time. Hopefully, it will be unnecessary.
Bullshit. BS. If Donald Trump had the ability to use the national security card, he would have used it. Now, the thing is, he was probably told by other Republicans that they didn't necessarily like the fact or like the point of him using that because that was somewhat of a usurping of the power of Congress. Meaning, even though they might have been okay with this kind of passive, we don't necessarily have to take a vote on this because Mitch McConnell is covering us. Well, that's not necessarily true if the president is doing things to essentially undermine your congressional authority or your congressional or powers that are supposed to be accrued to Congress. I suspect he had people tell him they don't like the fact that you're going to use this card, in which case he didn't use the card. It doesn't necessarily mean that Donald Trump couldn't declare a national emergency. He could declare it. He just understood there were going to be political consequences for doing so. And I suspect it is a last resort, more so than anything else, if he comes out of all of this after all of the chaos that he's caused in people's lives with bupkis. Let's go through the details of this. This video is not going to be long because I don't want to bathe in the failure for too long, because at the end of the day, there were real people at the end of this shutdown. And those real people were being hurt for the duration of not getting paychecks. I mean, for fuck's sake, we're at a point where most people live paycheck to paycheck. Or let's say a large share of people. I'm not going to say most. That's too strong. I don't know if that's an absolute. But a large share of people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. And going without it, not for anything they did wrong, not for any screw-ups or foibles or anything else on their behalf, but purely because the president had a campaign pledge that he wanted to implement. Yeah. There are a few reasons for this. So let's take a look at this. Just the details of it, and then let's talk about it after. I am very proud to announce today that we've reached a deal. The legislation will fund the government through February 15th on the condition that lawmakers continue negotiations on border security and Trump's border wall demands once the government shutdown is over. This is essentially House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's demand and a very similar bill to the one that failed in the Senate on Thursday. Trump couldn't help but boost his own position, though. As everyone knows, I have a very powerful alternative, but I didn't want to use it at this time, he said, like referring to the plan to declare a national emergency and pull out funding for his border wall, something he did not do and actually got a lot of pushback from the right for considering, meaning from his own party. Trump's announcement marks a major win for Democrats who resolutely refused to negotiate on the border security until the government was reopened. Good. You don't want to create, moral hazard where the person goes back to the same tactic over and over and over again. Kind of like not continuing to vote for corporate Democrats because they would just keep putting up another corporate Democrat with this threat of losing to somebody like Donald Trump again. Kind of like that. Let's go to Peoples. President Donald Trump said Friday he would agree to temporarily reopen the federal government for 3 weeks after a 35-day shutdown and a historic closure begun by his demands for border wall, which congressional Democrats empowered in the midterms have roundly rejected. After 5 weeks, the president's reversal amounted to a concession to the Democrats' stated position throughout in the shutdown, which affects 9 federal agencies and some 800,000 employees, while continuing to negotiate about the specifics of the border security. The reason Donald Trump didn't want to do that is rather obvious. If you remove the border wall issue, then what impetus do Democrats have to negotiate on the border wall? Zero. That's his issue. That's not theirs. That's something you promised your campaign. They didn't promise that. And you said Mexico was going to pay for it. All of those things are things that you did, not them. All of this boils down to you. Added to this, Trump has another problem. People stopped showing up to work, meaning in the various agencies, more and more people had stopped showing up to their positions, particularly with regards to the IRS. And Trump has another problem. This is his shutdown. CNN poll of polls, Trump approval rating hits mid-shutdown, hits low. Trump's approval rating in the month of January during the longest shutdown in U.S. history stands at 37% approved, 57% disapproved, down from his average of 41% approve and 51% disapprove. The important number here is 71% said that building a wall along the border with Mexico isn't worth shutting the government down. And 61% said the border can be secured without building the wall. Meaning, even if you get people saying, yeah, we need to do something about that wall. Maybe it's not a crisis, but there's something going on. I mean, otherwise the president wouldn't be flipping out in this way. There has to be something. Because from their standpoint, they may not believe that people could be this over-the-top political and this emptied in their rhetoric and lie this flagrantly. They don't believe it. I think they may start believing it with Trump, but I don't think they're that cynical yet. So they may think something is going on at the border. But the secondary question on this is, should we shut the government down to do that? And is this a national priority? And the answer to that is no. Even if you ask Republicans and you say, should we do something about the border? They would say, fuck yes, fuck those immigrants. And then they would say, but yeah, you don't have to shut the government down to do it. Like, you bleed off people from your position because the position is so extreme. We're going to shut the government down until we get what we want. Keep this in mind next time Medicare for All comes up hey, we're going to shut the government down until we get Medicare for all. We're going to declare national emergency until we can fund education for everybody, or for homelessness. We need to get rid of homelessness. We need to declare a national emergency to get rid of homelessness. And until I get the funding, I'm not going to open the government up. This tactic, be aware with the precedent that you set here. Donald Trump has a myriad of problems here. And I still go with the idea that he was going to start bleeding support. With numbers like this, more and more Republicans were going to start bleeding away from the position that Donald Trump has staked out. As I said on multiple videos, this was a losing position. This was a losing proposition. There is no impetus at all for the Democratic Party to act on this, because all of the blame is being landed on the head of Donald Trump. This complete and overt capitulation of Donald Trump in this case was forced by the position itself. He staked out an absurd position, and this was the result of that absurd position. But anyway, this is going to go on, for 3 weeks, until February 15th, just after Valentine's Day. And then we may see another shutdown if they can't come to any resolution on what they're trying to negotiate on. The Democrats are not going to give him any money for the border wall. At least I don't think they are. They may give it for border, fencing and all this other stuff. And then you had this other issue, and I'll end it on this, where a man who's seen as a misogynistic is making the point that he's going to have the State of the Union. Nancy Pelosi defiantly saying, not in this place, you're not. This is my dwelling. You're not going to come here for the State of the Union. Donald Trump sends a curt letter ignoring the fact that Nancy Pelosi told him to kick rocks, in which case Nancy Pelosi reasserted herself saying, kick rocks. You may be President of the United States, but this is my dwelling, and you will not set foot in here without my permission. And until the government is open, you won't be doing so. You can imagine, this are multiple losses. You were going to lose the State of the Union address. You were going to lose Republican support. You started to lose support among people in general in the population. Even people, again, who agreed that maybe something be going on at the border, disagreed with the extreme methods that you were taking in order to try to push forward this particular political position. Donald Trump was forced by the political winds in the position itself to relent. So he relented. He didn't have a choice. He could have tried to run this into the ground. He would have ran his presidency into the ground. One last point. He did all this for nothing. This was callous and cynical, where he essentially ran the government into the ground, ignoring his own constitutional responsibilities in order to, at the very least, as the executive, to keep the government open and to keep it moving, while simultaneously hurting nearly 1 million people at the other end of the economic scale because of his actions. I understand some Trump supporters are like, build the wall and all this other stuff, but this should give you some perspective of the individual who you are talking about here. He did all this, and all he got, didn't even get the stupid t-shirt. Let's see. All right. And let's see who's here. I take one question before I go to the next video. In fact, not the next video. I need to study up for what's taking place. Michael Easterwood. Thank you, Michael Easterwood. Do Democrats have a position on border security? Their wealthy donors are the same as Republican donors, and they have an interest in steady stream of cheap labor via legal immigration. All right, so Democrats, Obama deported, 3 million people? The answer is yes, Democrats do have a position on border security, but Democrats are often squarely on that position. Obama, to some degree, was going with this idea of making immigration such a horrible process that people would kind of edge off coming into the country. If that sounds familiar, that is essentially Donald Trump on steroids, meaning Donald Trump took that kernel of a policy that Obama had and made it worse. Democrats do have a position on border security. It was to deport 3 million people. And now they're taking a reflexive position on border security just because Donald Trump is in that office. Keep in mind, when they were in that office, they were doing not as ghastly, not, the ripping kids from their mamas, not stuff like that, and certainly not completely stopping asylum seekers. But Obama kicked 3 million people out of the country. Let's be honest, that even on immigration, the Democratic Party is not drastically different from the Republican Party once they get in office and once they're in governance. Also, they were willing to give Trump money for the border security. They just didn't want to give him money for the wall because the wall was unnecessary, and it was his campaign pledge that Mexico was supposed to pay for it. There's politics surrounding it, seeing as the border wall is very specific in regards to its political messaging. And the Democrats were being very specific and using political messaging to get across that they're not giving him a dime for the border wall, but they were giving him money for border security itself, if that makes sense. You have some Democrats who have pushed this thing of getting rid of ICE, and even if you get rid of ICE, that's not getting rid of border security. There were agencies in place dealing with immigration before ICE came into existence. ICE came into existence, what, 2001? Or 2003, something like that, but during the Bush administration. Some people think that just because something is in existence, it should continue to be in existence. Like existence itself is a reason for existence. Not so much. I mean, are there ways of dealing with these issues without using ICE? Yes. And so you have other Democrats who are saying get rid of ICE. But I guess my point is this. The position from Democrats and Republicans on the thing of immigration is not drastically different. Donald Trump has been ghastly on this. But if you had somebody like a Jeb Bush, would a Jeb Bush have that much of a different immigration policy than a Hillary Clinton? You know, not so much. Not so much. So Michael Easterwood is going to some degree depend on the person who you're talking to, because there's somewhat of a disparity between Democrats in regards to the immigration thing. I know the argument is often made that Democrats are for open borders. I don't think that's true. I don't know any Democrat that's for an open border. But the wall was just a political game. I mean, you know, real people being hurt by that. Jeb Bush is a Democrat. At this point, he might be. Kalita calling Harris charismatic is absurd, and Brooks was drooling over her. Drooling over Kamala Harris? Oh, that's yeah. President doesn't determine foreign policy. Gardner. Deep thought. So the man-child finally got sent to his room. Yeah, the man-child got sent to his room. Garden, I don't believe Donald Trump determines foreign policy. I just don't. I mean, it depends on the president, but I don't believe Donald Trump determines foreign policy. If anything, somebody sits him in a room and tells him what he's going to do when he goes out and does his acting role for the office itself. But this was very specific. I'm going to build a wall. That was his campaign pledge. And this was something that he was trying to take the heat on in order to push past. Well, he failed. At least right now he has. So, all right, I'm going to end this. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Geriatric sham sheep. Oh, jeez. Geriatric sham sheeper. It's always hard to say that. Is it me or Ben Stein looking like the secondary Pokemon from the show? Oh, I read that one. From the sham sheeper. This just sounds funny. Alright. I'm going to end this. Guys, if you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support the content through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. Oh, by the way, I'm going to have an interview with Extinction Rebellion coming up at 5, and there's another one at 8 o'clock with a gentleman from Australia that wrote a book dealing with environmental issues. He's a scientist, actually. Both of those should be interesting, particularly Extinction Rebellion, because these guys have been they've been putting their bodies on the line in order to push the notion that, look, we've been given, you know, a death sentence. We need to do something about it. Time's up. Our extinction is on the line. It's an existential threat that needs to be tackled and dealt with and recognized and acknowledged. So that should be an interesting interview, particularly them putting their bodies on the line in various places. So I will see you guys at 5 and another one at 8. And I don't know if I'm going to have one in between it. It depends on what I see. There was other stories that I put on my feed that I was looking at and thinking about. But we'll see. Thanks all. And we are